My name is Dr. Emily Anhalt. I am a psychologist and psychological consultant. And I grew up in Silicon Valley. Most of my community is in tech, so I've been kind of steeped in the world of technology and entrepreneurship for a long time. A number of years ago, I was having lunch with my friend Jake, who worked in tech. I was in grad school studying clinical psychology at the time. And I asked him how he was doing, and he said, I'm okay, but I just got taken off a project at work that I was really excited about. I said, that's disappointing. And he said, yes, it was. But to be honest, the worst part about it was how my boss handled the whole situation. He seemed to have no concept of the fact that I would have some feelings about being taken off this project. When I expressed some frustration and confusion, he acted defensive and dismissive. I was, at the time, learning how to be a really good psychologist, so I think I said, how does that make you feel, Jake? And he said, it makes me feel devalued and unimportant. And since then, I've had a lot of self-doubt, and I've been having trouble staying motivated at work. I started speaking to other people in the industry, and I began to hear all kinds of similar stories about bosses who didn't seem to understand that emotions in the workplace are a real thing. So I pivoted into the world of technology, taking everything I was learning about clinical psychology with me. And I've spent the past decade or so working clinically with venture capitalists, technology leaders, and entrepreneurs. Before we dive in, I want to take a quick poll of the audience. How many of you have heard this statistic or something like it? 1 in 4 people will experience mental health problems in their lifetime. Okay, a good handful of you. So this stat was put out a number of years ago with really good intentions. The idea was to try to raise awareness and destigmatize mental health issues. But to be honest with you, I do not like this statistic. To me, it is othering. It breaks us into these two categories: 25% of people who have mental health problems, and somehow 75% of people are getting through their entire life without mental health problems. This just did not resonate with me as a psychologist, or honestly as a human. So I took the liberty of making my own chart that I think is a little more accurate. Because we all have mental and emotional health, we all have mental and emotional health issues. We might not all be formally diagnosed with a psychological disorder, but we're all dealing with the universal pain of being human. We all have existential angst. We all have mourning to do, whether we're mourning the loss of a person, or a job we didn't get, or a path we didn't take. Plus, we're all thrown headfirst into this crazy world of adulting, and let's be honest, the struggle is really real on that one. So I think it's time to change this othering we do, where we try to locate something outside of ourselves that really is located within all of us. As many of you likely know, people in leadership positions are facing an entirely different type of stress, really high pressure. There's a lot of anxiety involved. I like to say that being a leader is a lot like being a parent. In that, like a parent, it is your job to create an ethos and a culture, hopefully one in which people feel safe and valued and included. And your team is going to be looking to you to know how to be at work. And by the way, they're going to be looking at what you're doing, not what you're saying. Also, like a parent, your unprocessed stuff gets leaked into your team and communicated, often without you realizing. I think we like to believe that we can keep our emotions away from the workplace. But I think that this desire to keep our work and our personal life separate is a fantasy. Kind of like the idea of work-life balance. What does this even mean anymore? Do you know? I'm not sure that I do. I wouldn't know where to draw the line between my work and my personal life. These days, people are working from home. They are answering emails until midnight. Their colleagues are their best friends. More than ever, we're doing work we love, which means we're defining our life and our identity by our work in a new way. For this reason, who we are anywhere is who we are everywhere. And if we are bringing our emotions with us to work, it's imperative that those in leadership positions be emotionally fit. At this point, I should probably tell you what I mean by emotional fitness. Emotional fitness is a term I developed to encompass my body of work, which is the pursuit of a regimen that people can undertake to move towards self-awareness and empathy. I want to specify that emotional fitness is not characterized by the absence of psychological disorders. A person can be struggling with depression, they can have ADHD, any number of things, and still be emotionally fit. My definition of emotional fitness is a commitment to looking inward, to processing through difficult emotions, and to working towards self-awareness and self-improvement. I like to compare it to physical fitness. Think about it this way. We all have a body, so we all have physical health. Some people have chronic illness, others don't, but we all get sick sometimes, and we all have unique strengths and limitations to attend to. A lot of people like to think that if they're not sick, that means they're healthy. But if you talk to someone who's really committed to their physical fitness, someone who sleeps 8 hours a night, eats healthy, exercises every day, they'll tell you, just because you're not ill does not mean that you are healthy. The same is true with emotional fitness. You might not be struggling with daily panic attacks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're as emotionally fit as you could be. Emotional fitness is an ongoing pursuit, and there's always more work to do. But like physical fitness, if you work on it regularly, you will become more emotionally strong, which protects you from certain issues down the line that you're inevitably going to face because of the ups and downs of being in a leadership position. Emotional fitness increases emotional intelligence, it improves leadership ability, and it contributes to healthier relationships across the board. So I wanted to figure out, what does this actually look like? How would a person know if they were sitting across the table from an emotionally fit leader? So what I did was I interviewed 100 psychologists and entrepreneurs about what they believe makes someone emotionally healthy. And I took all of their answers and my experience, and I boiled it all down into these 7 traits of an emotionally fit leader, things that an emotionally fit leader works towards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share all 7 of them, and for each one, I'll give you a suggestion as to how you can work toward emotional fitness in that area. Sound good? All right, let's dive in. The first trait of the emotionally fit leader is self-awareness. The emotionally fit leader can tolerate and identify their own emotions. They're self-reflective. They've taken the time to learn their triggers and their biases. They're patient. They can tolerate frustration. They know that the feelings they have about other people are really good information about what's going on within their own selves. If there's one important truth I've learned as a therapist, it's that our emotions are driving our actions much more than we realize. And the more we know ourselves, the more we have control over how we move through the world, and thus the more we can move through our life with intention. So to improve self-awareness, my recommendation is get into therapy. The work you can do for the world is extremely tied to the work you've been willing to do on your own self. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions and stigmas about therapy. A lot of people think therapy is something you do when you're in crisis, when you have a psychological disorder, when you're trying to get to the other side of something. And don't get me wrong, these are great times to seek therapeutic support. But therapy is also for anyone who wants to better understand who they are in the world, in relationships, and in their job. In fact, if you can get into therapy before you're in crisis, you're going to be in a position to do a different kind of work. Think again about our physical fitness metaphor. You wouldn't wait until you have the flu to go to the gym, right? When you have the flu, maybe you go to the doctor, you rest, you recharge, you get back to baseline. And then once you're mostly healthy, you can go to the gym, you can work out, build strength, and likely be less sick later in life. The same is true for emotional fitness. If you can get into therapy when things are mostly okay, you're going to have the capacity and the facilities to do a deeper kind of work, the kind of work where you get underneath the surface and really get to know who you are. So that's the first trait, self-awareness. The second trait of the emotionally fit leader is empathy. The emotionally fit leader can understand and tolerate the emotions of other people. They regularly put themselves in other people's shoes. They understand other people might have different feelings than they do. And they know that their actions have an effect on other people, and they care about that effect. So to increase empathy at work, it's important to check in with your team often. And when you do, don't just listen, empathize. Empathy has a feelings component. If you intellectually understand what someone is feeling, but you're not feeling any of it, that's not empathy. Empathy means allowing yourself to feel what someone else is feeling in order to understand them, without taking those feelings on as your own. So that, I think, is the fear with empathy. People worry, if I empathize too much, then your problems become my problems, and now it's my job to fix these problems. But that is not the case. Being truly present with your team doesn't mean you're taking all their problems as yours. It means you're recognizing the fact that whether they like it or not, whether you like it or not, they are bringing their emotions with them to work. The next trait of the emotionally fit leader is a willingness to play. Play is a really important developmental capacity and has huge benefits in the workplace. Play isn't just about games. If any of you have ever taken an improv class, you know that in the world of improv, the definition of play is that when someone comes to you with an idea, you don't say yes, but, and you don't even just say yes. You say yes, and. You meet them where they are and you build on their ideas, and together you get somewhere that neither of you could have gotten alone. Brainstorming is a type of play in this way. In the workplace, play builds creativity and spontaneity. It increases cognitive functioning and memory. It fosters team collaboration. And I even read one study that showed that people who play regularly in their life live longer by a significant number of years. So to play more, it's imperative to build it into your daily routine. Play is really hard to do, actually, because it's vulnerable. When we play, our guards come down naturally, which is scary for people who work really hard to keep their guards up. But the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, the easier it feels, and the more you'll see the benefits. So try starting your next meeting with an icebreaker game. Host a game of capture the flag for your whole team. Allow yourself to be silly sometimes. Don't be afraid to play. The next trait of the emotionally fit leader is reality testing, the ability to face difficult realities. Said another way, the emotionally fit leader is someone who can see and handle the difference between what they want to be true and what is true. Low emotional fitness in this area tends to look like people discounting facts and truths that don't match their desire, which is a really difficult and dangerous thing for a company. I'm sure you've all seen examples in the news of how quickly a company can fail when the people at the top aren't willing to face what's right in front of them. So to improve this capacity, I recommend recruiting other minds regularly. Sometimes we're so close to something that we can't really see it. Sometimes we're so invested in a particular truth that we ignore evidence that suggests something different. By recruiting other minds, you're seeing reality from multiple perspectives, and thus you're going to have a more complete picture. The next trait of the emotionally fit leader is mindfulness, the ability to tolerate discomfort. So much of what we do in life is in service of moving away from discomfort. And so often, the thing we do to move away from that discomfort ends up being more uncomfortable and worse feeling than the original discomfort was. The emotionally fit leader can slow things down. They can make space for themselves. And they know what tends to make them uncomfortable and how they tend to avoid it. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a woman a number of years ago who was especially uncomfortable with awkward silences. She just hated that feeling, and so whenever there was one, she filled it. But then later, she would feel shame and embarrassment about having spoken out of turn and saying things that didn't need to be said. So together we worked on her ability to tolerate the feeling that came up in those silences. She taught herself to take a deep breath and show herself, okay, I can get through this, it's not so bad. And suddenly, out of these silences came all of these amazing things. Team members who didn't usually have room to speak up were contributing. Ideas that didn't have a space to come through were bubbling up from the surface. And it's because she learned how to process her discomfort. Getting more comfortable being uncomfortable is so important. The emotionally fit leader knows that they can tolerate it. It won't kill them. Let me think about that. I think a great way to do this is yoga. All right. So yoga, if you think about it, is literally putting people in physically uncomfortable positions and then asking them to pay attention to what comes up for them. So it's an opportunity for you to learn your particular relationship to your discomfort, and thus you're going to be able to manage it better. The next trait of the emotionally fit leader is resilience. The emotionally fit leader can hear criticism and feedback, they can make mistakes, they can fail sometimes, and they can bounce back from that. They are able to know that we learn more from our failures than our successes, and I think their desire to grow is genuinely greater than their desire to avoid criticism or tough times. I often like to refer to the idea that a perfect parent does not prepare their child for an imperfect world. And by that I mean, it is not your job as a leader never to fail and never to make a mistake. In fact, you are probably doing your team a greater service by showing them how to gracefully get through a difficult time or a mistake than you would be by never failing at all. Because of course they're going to make their own mistakes, and if they've had an example of how to face it head on and get through it, that's going to be hugely beneficial for them. To work on your resilience, it's so important to build your self-confidence. People who have a strong sense of self are less likely to be torn down during difficult times. To build your self-confidence, take in positive feedback. This is something a lot of us have trouble doing. I recommend making a folder on your desktop where you save every piece of positive feedback that you get, so that when you're feeling not so great about yourself, you can look at it and remember how much value you have. Talk back to that harsh inner critic. It's okay to say, I hear you, but no, I have value, I'm doing pretty well. And when in doubt, seek validation from the people who think you're fantastic and are probably really excited to reflect that to you. The last trait of the emotionally fit leader is effective communication. The emotionally fit leader can put words to their needs and expectations. They can balance a healthy amount of transparency with optimism and confidence. Said another way, they know when to tell it like it is and when to play things a little closer to the chest. People will sometimes tell me, Emily, you say to be transparent with my team, but if I were to tell them how things are going when they're not going well, they would freak out. And to this I say that the key is balance. Imagine you're the leader of a company and things aren't going so well. Maybe you're in the trough of sorrow, you're not so sure what's going to happen, you're worried about it. And your team comes up to you and they say, how we doing, boss? Hopefully you wouldn't say, we're great. I don't know what you're talking about, everything's good. Because people are perceptive. And when what you say does not match how you feel and does not match what's going on in reality, they can tell, and it's very unsettling. On the other hand, hopefully you don't say, it's all going to hell, pack your bags, we're all about to be homeless. Because someone wants to know that there's someone at the helm of the boat, maintaining optimism and confidence even when things are a little bit rough. So being an emotionally fit leader means modeling the middle. It means saying something like, listen, the future's uncertain, I'm not totally sure what's going to happen, and that's scary, but we are going to get through it, and we're in it together. Here are my thoughts about our next steps. To build your ability to effectively communicate, it's so important to find your community. A solid community of like-minded individuals is a huge asset when you're a leader. Join a leadership group. Find people who also care about emotional fitness. Foster collaboration over competition. I think deep down we all have a fear that there isn't really enough success to go around. That success is like a pie, and every time someone gets a slice, there's less left for the rest of us. But my experience has actually been the exact opposite. That as you elevate people around you, you will be lifted up with them. An emotionally fit leader is someone who trusts this truth. To tell you how this can all kind of come together, I want to tell you the story of a man I'm calling Sam, who I worked with. When I met Sam, he was a 20-something-year-old guy working at a prominent tech company in Silicon Valley. He was really sharp, smart, super confident. As a child, Sam grew up in a military family who really pushed the values of facing a problem head-on. Their main mantra was, deal with it. Sam didn't really see the value of sulking, and he had a lot of pride in his ability to push through tough times. He felt right at home in the world of tech, where the whole ethos is, everything's fine, I'm crushing it, even when you're not crushing it. That worked for Sam. However, he came to find that although he was a smart leader, he was not a particularly empathetic leader. When he got promoted to a managerial position and people came to him with problems that were not strictly technical, he told them essentially to deal with it and sent them on their way. His team learned not to bring their emotions to Sam, and they tried to keep their emotions far away from them at work. Pretty quickly, the atmosphere of the team became one of vigilance and tension. People were getting into fights with each other, there was conflict, their work was suffering, and before long, Sam was getting less than stellar feedback on his performance reviews. His team wrote that they felt really overwhelmed by his expectations and that they felt devalued by Sam. This completely floored him. He had no idea he was devaluing his team. And when he read that, it caused him all kinds of stress and anxiety, which he couldn't just deal with. And it was at this time that he and I started to work together. Admittedly, the work with Sam started kind of slow. He knew he had work to do, but he didn't really see the value in hashing through all of these emotions instead of just trying to find a solution. But he stuck with it. And over time, he came to realize that although his ability to deal with it had acted as a strength at many times in his life, it was now getting in his way. He realized that it had felt like a burden at times to pretend like everything was fine when it wasn't. And maybe he was a little envious of his coworkers who could feel frustrated and sad and overwhelmed. He came to the conclusion that he had been pushing down in his team, without even realizing it, the very thing that he had learned to push down in himself. As he made more space for his emotional self, he also was able to make more space for the emotions of his team. And over time, morale began to improve, and so did his reviews. Now, did Sam become the most emotional and the most empathetic person ever? No. But that was never the goal. Emotional fitness isn't about stripping yourself of who you are. It's about developing a system of self-inquiry that can help show you when you're getting in your own way. To Sam's credit, he was already fairly emotionally fit in that he was able to face the difficult reality that his team wasn't happy with him, and he was able to bring in other minds to help him see the bigger picture. In doing this, he made some room for his own emotions, which allowed him to tolerate the discomfort he had for the emotions of his team, which led to more communication, and on and on. You see where I'm going with this. All 7 of these traits are really intertwined. As you work on one, others will naturally improve. This has a tremendous effect in the world of technology and education, which are defining a lot about our society. Emotionally fit leaders foster and attract emotionally fit employees. Emotionally fit employees create emotionally fit products. Emotionally fit products increase emotional fitness in users. We are in a real position to change the world we're living in, and it starts with our leaders looking inward. So I'd like to leave you with some action items. Here are 5 things you could do in the next week to increase your emotional fitness and to kickstart your emotional fitness regimen. The first one is write down your known triggers. What flips your switch quickly? What is it about that annoying colleague that might teach you a little something about yourself? The next is start your meetings with a check-in. Go around and just see how people are doing. You don't have to fix their problems, but at least you'll have taken a temperature of the room and you'll have some context as to why some of them might be more or less present than they usually would be. Another idea is play a game with your team. One that I really love is called 2 Truths and a Lie. Everyone goes around and tells 3 short stories about themselves. 2 are true and 1 isn't, and then everyone has to guess which is the fake story. You get to learn a lot about your team, and it's fun. Or try meditating for 10 minutes. This is a great way to become more comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's really hard to sit with ourselves and our thoughts, even for only 10 minutes. And finally, reach out to a peer or a mentor you respect. There's tremendous value in building a relationship before you need something from someone. It shouldn't all be about networking. Sometimes it's about being with people. Like with any type of fitness regimen, emotional fitness isn't always easy or comfortable, but the more you work on it, the more it will get woven into your life, and the more you'll wonder how you ever lived your life without paying attention to these important things. Please feel free to reach out anytime to continue this conversation, and thank you so much for having me.